It was the biggest speech in his history of being mayor of this city. Mayor John Tory making the pitch for road tolls on the Don Valley Parkway and the Gardiner Expressway to help solve this city's financial woes. It would be tolls on those roadways of $2 each trip, there and back. It would raise more than $200 million a year, according to the mayor in a lunchtime discussion in a crowd downtown. It would be implemented within 3 to 7 years. The man everybody is talking about joins us here on The Rush. Mayor John Tory, nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here, guys.
Let's start off with the political side of this. This is something that not a lot of politicians have wanted to touch. They've called it the political third rail. Do you feel you've committed political suicide by raising an issue such as toll roads?
No, I think I've shown honest leadership as part of a plan to actually address, for once, the need to address the crippling traffic in this city. And the only way you're going to effectively do that over time is by building more transit. And for years, we've had politicians at City Hall, over and over, council after council, mayor after mayor, who have declared all these projects they're going to build. I can name you because they're the ones that I'm actually going to build and pay for with this money. The Waterfront LRT, the Scarborough Crosstown, the SmartTrack project. These are going to be built, but no one in any of these projects before, the relief line, the relief line, said how they were going to pay for them. And I'm just being honest about this, and I've made the best choice I think is the fairest in the circumstances. And when you say, how will it affect my political future? I believe you don't go wrong doing the right thing. And I think this is fair. This is going to take the 40% of the people who use these roads do not pay any taxes in Toronto, so that they're leaving it to Toronto taxpayers to foot the entire bill, which over the next few years, just to replace and upkeep these two roads, is going to cost $3 billion. Totally paid for by Toronto taxpayers if we didn't do something like this, that at least is going to introduce the notion that maybe some of these other people that use the road, 40% of the total, are going to pay some part of that bill. So I believe I can stand on this and be proud of the fact that I'm being honest with people, and we're going to get on with building the transit. We're going to get on with being honest about how to pay for it, and that's going to be something that people will be think of as a feather in my cap. Maybe not the people who are listening here today and who've been writing you all kinds of emails and politicians from 905 who are upset, but I'm proud of the fact that I'm standing up and taking a strong stand in favor of getting things done.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the projects that you do want to get done. And specifically, I'd like to ask you about the proposed RailDeckPark, which is sort of an add-on. It's a dream-esque type project. Does this get put to a back burner now? Or is this something that you can still look at these types of tolls to help us build down the road?
Here's the problem, Jay. We were putting everything on the back burner. There was nothing on the front burner. And so I'm not going to say that anything's going on to the back burner. I am saying the transit projects are first and foremost because the traffic in which a lot of the listeners are sitting right now is crippling. It's crippling the economy. It's hurting families. It's hurting the environment. I mean, there's nothing good about it. It's bad. It's a nightmare. And the only effective way you are going to deal with that traffic is going to be to build transit. And so those things are on the front burner, but I'm not going to sit here and declare that park or the long-term care for older people that is on that list. There's $33 billion of projects that have been approved by previous councils with not one indication as to how to pay for them. And that, to me, is dishonest with the public. And so the long-term care is a priority. I talked today about the portlands and how we have to do flood protection there. And we have to do the flood protection, both because if there was a storm of the century now, half of Riverdale would be flooded. Literally. And also we can't develop those lands, one of the biggest economic development opportunities for Ontario, for Ontario and Toronto in the next number of years. And if we don't flood protect the land, we can't develop it. And that's going to cost $330 million. The long-term care for the elderly, $250 million. The relief line, several $billion. SmartTrack, $1 billion or some such number from what's done after the tax increment financing. So the transit projects are first and foremost, but there are many other things, of which the park is another one. And you know what we did? We built all kinds of condos downtown. There was no trouble approving those. All kinds. People can see them with their own eyes. But we didn't provide adequate parkland for the people who are living down there now, including lots of families. And I don't think that was responsible. So when you say, am I going to put that on the back burner? I think having parks for those people is actually something that is quite necessary. And so I'll be treating that as a priority, and we'll be finding ways to pay for these things.
But there will be people who will say, if we don't have any money, how can a park be a priority?
But I can't believe people would say that because, at the end of the day, it's fine for them to say that. This park is not some kind of a bauble that we're putting there so that people will stand and look at it and put it on postcards. This is a park that I hope will become a worldwide attraction. But let's make no mistake about why we're putting it there. because we have all those people living in all those condos in Liberty Village and the City Place, like thousands of people who don't have any parks. And when you don't have a living room or a family room or a backyard or a front yard, then it is up to the very same city that allows you to build those condos 50 stories tall to make sure there's some place that those kids and those families can go. So this park is not some kind of a sort of a pipe dream we're going to do for that reason. It is a necessity to have proper parkland in a livable city, as it is to have public transportation in a livable city.
Back in 2003, the first time you ran for mayor against David Miller, and I'll read the quote, you said, "What really worries me is the negative impact that tolls will have on the downtown. If people just had that one other thing to worry about, paying $4.50, $2.25 each way, they may not bother to go downtown to do some shopping or to go to a restaurant." In 2014, you said that we need to make Toronto more affordable, and imposing new taxes is not the way to tackle traffic congestion. How have you changed from 2003 John Tory, 2014 John Tory, to this guy today that's saying now it's a different story?
Let's deal with 2014 first. What I was talking about there is, property tax increases, and I stand by that today, and it lay behind my decision. As I said, I had three choices. If I wanted to be honest with people and say we have to pay for the transit that I think every one of your listeners, I'd be surprised if there was one listener that didn't agree we have to build lots more transit. So the question then becomes, how do you pay for it? I had three choices. Choice number one, massive increases in property taxes. I have kept my word and kept property tax increases at or below the rate of inflation. That's the biggest check people write to the City of Toronto every year. Choice two, sell assets like Toronto Hydro. I don't think people wanted to do that. I don't think it was the best way to go on this. You can only sell assets once, so I said no to that. So then you get to choice three, which is other revenue-raising mechanisms. And I explained today why not a parking levy, and I chose to go with road tolls. Back to 2003, when I made those statements 13 years ago, there weren't 75,000 new people living downtown. And I believe today that while, the toll's not being imposed or not imposed, as I propose, in order to protect or enhance downtown businesses or try and hurt them, of course, that it is a way that we can make sure that we are having the money to pay for the transit, and that we take these people who do not live or pay any taxes at all in the City of Toronto, but who use our roads that cost us billions to build and maintain, and ask them to pay a small fair share of the cost of the roads they use.
But is the 2003 concern not the same, that people won't come downtown, that they won't do their shopping or go to a restaurant and enjoy our city? I mean, you had that concern back then.
No, but I guess the point I was trying to make, Ryan, was that there are now tens and tens and tens of thousands of people living downtown that didn't live downtown before, number one. And number two, I pointed out today that at precisely the time when these tolls could come into effect, if they're approved, will be the time when there's going to be a dramatic expansion of GO train service, a dramatic expansion with SmartTrack, accelerated transit projects that are happening in the city right now, and the other ones we're going to get on with because we have the money from these tolls. And
but
again,
there still may be motorists that will stay home.
Well, I can't predict that. I doubt it. I mean, we're acting here as if this is the first time in the world that anybody's put on tolls. There are tolls all over the world. People listening have been to many, many cities that had them on highways in and out of their downtown and other places.
And you could make the argument, why are you going to avoid a hockey game or a concert or going shopping in a place like Buffalo just because of tolls? You're still going to go because of these events. $2 isn't going to stop me if I want to come downtown.
No, and by the way, if people want to, decide they're going to come downtown together in a carpool or just share a car, or that they're going to take public transit, or in the case of work that there's going to be more telecommuting, I don't think this is bad either, because if you go back to the root cause that I'm trying to address here, which is dealing with the nightmarish traffic that you guys end up talking about all the time, and you fill up, the time on the airwaves with the traffic reports because so many people are trying to deal with what is a nightmare. That's what I'm trying to address by building transit, and we got to pay for it.
Mayor Tory, I got to ask you, because a lot of people have called in with this, and people who follow the news are probably a little bit more tapped into the idea of adding 3 more councillors. To a lot of people, that sounds like waste. It sounds like more bloated government rather than a reduction in councillors where you'd actually save some money. We're talking about now dinging the taxpayer $2 to use the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway. Does that not send a bit of a mixed message that we're broke as a city, but we can afford 3 more councillors on the payroll?
Well, I'm sure would have wanted to note that I voted against adding the 3 councillors because I said I hadn't run into a single person yet who thought we should add more politicians at City Hall, and I voted against it for that reason. But different councillors have different reasons for voting the other way, and I think it lost by a couple of votes. I don't remember exactly what the vote was, but I just know I voted against it.
But the optics are bad. Understanding that you voted against it, but the rest of city councils, at least the majority, thought it was a good idea.
It's not ideal. I mean, we are trying right now to do a lot of things to restrain expenditures. You've seen I've been pilloried. You can't have it both ways. People are going to criticize me for the fact I asked each department to try and find 2.6% in efficiencies, and then they can't turn around and say we're not trying to do anything to spend their money more responsibly. You get it both ways in this business, but that is one of the reasons I voted against adding 3 councillors, because I felt that it was a contradictory message, and it's not really necessary. We need to adjust the boundaries so some representatives don't have all kinds of people, more so than someone else. Like, because of that growth I talked about with tens of thousands of people downtown, those wards are huge and unmanageable. So they need to adjust those boundaries, but they didn't need to add more politicians.
When we talk about the idea of finding what used to be called gravy around here, people have called in. Doug Ford was talking again today about the fact that there are savings out there to be had, that we don't need to go to the taxpayer. Have those departments...
Why didn't Doug Ford, when he was down there for the last 4 years, then identify all those savings? And why is it that the very same Doug Ford, talked about subways, and actually you said they were going to come up with the money, this way, and they didn't. Somebody like Doug Ford, he has an obligation to stand up, as opposed to trying to fan his political ambitions, which I understand people will have those. I've had mine too. But he's got to stand up. I'm standing up for the people of Toronto in saying, for example, that people who use our roads from outside Toronto who don't pay any taxes to pay for any of the cost, billions of dollars to keep those roads up and to rebuild them as they have to be done, that they should pay their fair share. And I don't know whether he's now, by opposing this, saying that he's going to stand up for the 905 people, and maybe that's mixed up in his provincial ambitions. But the bottom line is, when he had a chance, if he'd identified all the sources to pay for all this transit, then I guess he would have done so, but obviously he didn't.
I guess my question is, do those savings exist? These, the excess, the gravy, is it there at City Hall?
Anybody who tells you there are no savings left to be found in any government or any company for that matter is not being straight with you. And it is why in my speech today I talked about things we could do. We've changed a couple of the floors in terms of how people occupy floors in the Metro Hall to bring about a 25% improvement in the kind of productivity of the space, putting more people in the same space. That's going to save millions every year. We're moving to go away from counter service, where you go up and stand in line for $23 a transaction, to online services at $2 a transaction. The first 2 hubs online are going to be created by next year so that we can do away with a lot of these counters. That's going to save millions of dollars every single year. I announced today we're going to do away with a rebate we used to give to empty stores, which I think acted as an encouragement to keep your store empty because we sent them a check. $367 million over the last number of years. We're doing away with that. So, we will have fewer people working in the city government next year than we did this year. So those are all things that I'm working on in a business-like way as part of a plan, and I'm very committed to it, but it doesn't change the fact that in order to build the transit, we need to have money that we don't presently have. And people like Mr. Ford, they should be asked to explicitly set out how they would pay for the transit, or if they want to say they're not going to build the transit, that's fine, because I would happily debate him any day on the need for the transit and challenge him to tell us and anybody else how they're going to pay for it.
And we'd be happy to host that debate anytime.
I'm sure you would.
We'll give you actually 2 hours for that one. Let's talk a little bit about this being day one. Obviously, this is new information for a lot of people. If you're just hearing it now, it's very, very new to you. How has the initial reaction been to your office with today's announcement, and has it been what you pretty much expected, and how do you see it going forward?
It's been quite balanced. We had started off more negative than positive, but of course, as you know from this business, there are more people who will call you about something that they feel negatively about than positively, and by the end of the day, the emails were balancing out, still a little bit more negative than positive, which just goes along with what I just said, and I understand that. I could announce what day it was today, and there would be some people who'd phone my office and disagree with that. No, it isn't Thursday. Definitely not. On some other calendar or something. So I get that, and I don't feel badly for myself about that. When you're in this business, you got to be a big boy, and you got to stand up and make decisions and show leadership. Leaders show leadership. I have a plan to take the city forward. It involves better care of the city's finances, keeping taxes low, attracting jobs to the city, and perhaps most importantly of all, building the transit and housing we need to make sure the city is livable, especially when it comes to the nightmarish traffic. And so if you're confident in that plan and you're honest with people about it, then I think they're going to be at least balanced in their response, and that's been my finding from today so far.
This won't surprise you, but I have very little trust in government when it comes to my money. You see something like the gas tax, for example, that was supposed to be earmarked specifically for transit, and it has sat there for years and years and gone into general revenue of government. How do we know, and how do the taxpayers out there that are going to pay this $2 toll know that the money is going where you're earmarking it to go?
Well, I've said